Good evening or good morning, wherever you are in the world. I'm Regina Yao. I'm the founder and president of the Pixel Project, and I'm moderating the 4th YouTube session of the 7th annual fall edition of our Read for Pixels campaign. So through Read for Pixels, the Pixel Project is collaborating with 12 award-winning best-selling authors to raise awareness about violence against women and to raise funds for the Pixel Project to keep our efforts to end violence against women alive and kicking. So we'll be telling you more about the Read for Pixels fundraiser, which has lots and lots of exclusive author goodies. And you'll be finding out, and you can find out about the Pixel Project and learn more about violence against women and what to do about it by visiting www.thepixelproject.net. Now, we have a very special guest for today's live Read for Pixels Q&A and discussion session. It's the fabulous crime and thriller author, Meg Gardiner. Now, Meg is the award-winning author of 15 thrillers. Her novels have been bestsellers in the US and internationally and have been translated into more than 20 languages. And China Lake won the 2009 Edgar Award for Best Paperback Original. UNSUB, which we'll be talking about this session, won the 2018 Barry Award for Best Thriller. The 2020 Meg is also the 2020 president of the Mystery Writers of America, and she lives in Austin, Texas. Welcome, Meg.
It's great to be here. Thank you, Regina, for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to be here on a Sunday evening. And you have also generously donated some super exclusive goodies to the stash of author treats we have up as perks for donors on the Read for Pixels Rally Up fundraising page. So, okay, correct me if I'm wrong. So the first one is your UNSUB books and pins bundle, which is for US donors only. And you are offering fans of kick-ass female protagonists in the US one paperback edition of UNSUB, which is the first book in the series, which is signed and personalized for the donor. One paperback edition of Into the Black Nowhere, which is signed and personalized as well, and one first edition hardcover of The Dark Corners of the Night, signed and personalized. And as a extra treat, you also have a set of 2 exclusive UNSUB pins. Well, the theme there. So, what's the design? What are the designs
of the pins? They are from the new book, The Dark Corners of the Night. One of them is a version, it's an enamel pin, a version of the cover. Ooh. And the other one is just a little lighthearted pin. It's it's a dripping painted eye, which is from the book. The villain tends to spray paint these on the walls of the houses he invades. So just a fun little thing. I wear them on my shirts, on my hats.
So the second treat that you have, and this one is available to donors worldwide, is one 30-minute one-to-one video call. So you have donated this so that you will be able to chat. You'll be able to chat with about the art and craft of writing and the business of publishing with one donor, one generous donor. So if anyone here is a crime or thriller writer who needs some, if you hit a wall or you have no idea how to solve a certain plot tangle, or you want to learn, or you haven't been successful in getting your books in front of editors or agents, and you're wondering, what you did wrong. Well, not wrong, but what you're missing. Meg can give you some hints and tips, and she'll talk you through all this whatever you ask about writing and publishing in 30 minutes. And you can choose to have the session on Zoom or Zoom or Skype,
We can set it
FaceTime.
up. Yeah, we can set it up. Yeah, either one of them.
Yeah, either one of those, because they're the most common video chatting apps out there. So please, there's only one of each goodie on a fundraising page, and you better hurry up to donate to get it, because once it's gone, it's gone. You know, if someone decides, I'm going to donate, I'm going to get that goodie from Meg, that's it. They booked it. That's it. So please give generously. All funds go towards our work to help end violence against women. And that includes programs like this one, where we have outreach to readers and fandoms and kids. As Meg and I were chatting about before we went on air. If you're watching this session on YouTube right now, you'll be able to ask Meg questions live. Just make sure you're logged into your YouTube account so you can type your questions into the chat box to the right of the YouTube screen, and Xiao Chin and Juliana, who are today's producers and chat box moderators, will relay them to me to read out to Meg to answer. Well, Xiao Chin will do that, and while Juliana keeps an eye on the chat box. And now over to Meg. Meg, what will you be reading for us today?
I will be reading the opening scene from Into the Black Nowhere, because we want to launch into a story. And the series, you can read these books on their own. You don't have to read one after the other. They all feature the same heroine. Her name is Caitlin Hendricks. She is a young investigator. She has been recruited to the FBI to help the behavioral analysis unit track and capture serial predators, essentially. So the section I'm going to read is the chapter 1 of a book which sets the scene for the case that she is going to be sent out to with her team to investigate. So here we go. The cry pierced the walls, ringing through the darkness. Shayna Kerber roused and squinted at the clock. 12:45 a.m. Her voice came as a sigh. Already? Shayna huddled for a minute under the comforter, clinging wishfully to warmth and sleep. Hush yourself, JD, please. But the baby's crying intensified. It was her strong, wide awake, I'm hungry cry. The night was bitter. Early February, the north wind scouring Texas. It whistled through the cracks in the farmhouse, rattling the doors in their frames. Shayna rolled over. The other side of the bed was cool. Brandon wasn't home yet. For a few more seconds, Shayna lay still, aching with fatigue, hoping JD would quiet. But she was crying to beat the band, 10 months old and still up twice a night. Shayna's mom swore things would get easier. She'd been swearing so for months. When, Mom? When? Please. Coming, baby, Shayna murmured. She tossed back the covers, brushed her sleep-tangled hair from her face, and slogged out of the bedroom. The hardwood floor creaked beneath her bare feet. JD's cries grew clearer. 6 feet down the hall, she slowed. The crying wasn't coming from the nursery. The house was completely dark. JD was too little to climb out of her crib. Shayna turned on the hall light. The nursery door was open. A sliver of ice seemed to slide through her chest. At the far end of the hall, she could see into the living room. On the sofa, half lit by the hall light, a stranger sat holding her little girl on his lap. The icy sliver sank through Shayna. What are you doing here? Don't worry, I'm a friend of your husband. The man's face was in shadow. His voice was soothing, almost warm. She was crying, didn't want to wake you. He seemed completely relaxed. Shayna walked slowly to the living room. She glanced out the front window. The moon was full. An SUV was parked outside. A placard hung from the rearview mirror. Is that, she looked him up and down. Army? Are you? The baby twisted in the man's arms. He bounced her. She's quite the little doll. He tickled JD and made baby talk. Shayna tried harder to see his face. His eyes remained in shadow. Something stopped her from turning on the table lamp. Is he a friend of Brandon's? Shayna extended her hands. I'll take her. The wind battered the windows. The man's smile persisted. Though she couldn't see his eyes, Shayna had a gut certainty that he was watching her. She edged forward. She was 8 feet from him, out of his reach. Give JD to me. He didn't. Her hands were open. Please. JD twisted in the man's arms. Her chubby legs pumped like pistons. Shayna's heart thundered. She saw the power in the man's hands and knew she couldn't simply charge at him. The shotgun was under her bed. 5 seconds was what it would take to run to the bedroom, grab it, and rush back down the hall. It was a 12 gauge. It was loaded. And it was useless because this man was holding her child to his chest, her breathing caught like a cloth snagging on a nail. She inched forward. Give her here. For a few seconds, he continued bouncing JD. Crying, the little girl reached starfish fingers towards Shayna. She wants her mama, the man said. Oh, come here. Shayna had held still, her own arms outstretched. Give me my baby. The smile stiffened. The man set JD gently beside him on the sofa. Before Shayna could inhale, he lowered his shoulders, gathering himself. He was in motion when the light finally hit his eyes. The dashboard clock read 1:30 a.m. when Brandon Kerber turned onto the gravel driveway. The truck bounced over the ruts, stereo blasting Chris Stapleton. Brandon whistled along. His rare Saturday night out had been golden. A Spurs game in San Antonio with friends from his Army days. He curved past the stand of cedars, and the house came into view. What? The front door was open. Brandon gunned the F-150 up to the house. The windows reflected the truck's headlights like wild eyes. He jumped out. In the wind, the door was banging back against the wall. An acid taste burned his throat. Banging that loud should have woken Shayna up. Inside the darkened house, he heard a mournful sound. Crying. Brandon rushed in. The living room was cold. The headlights threw his shadow ahead of him on the floor like a blade. The crying kept up. It was the baby. JD laid huddled on the floor. He scooped her up. Shayna! He hit a light switch. The living room lit up, clean, neat, and empty. JD's eyes were red-rimmed. She was exhausted from sobbing. He pulled her to his chest. Her cries diminished to pathetic hiccups. Shayna! Brandon ran to the bedroom with the baby and flipped on the light. He spun and strode down the hall, looking in the nursery, in the kitchen, the garage, the back porch. Nothing. Shayna was gone. He stood in the living room, clutching JD, telling himself, she's here. I just can't see her. But the truth closed in on him. Shayna had vanished. She was the fifth. That's chapter 1.
That actually, when I read that scene, the opening scene, it unfurled in my mind like the start of a really great TV series. And I think you have an announcement about that, right?
Oh, yes. I'm very excited that the UNSUB books have been bought by Amazon Studios for development as a television series. So I hope once production really gets rolling again, post-COVID, we will be seeing Caitlin and her team and these stories on the screen for streaming.
They're gonna hopefully do a good job. They've done quite a few crime series adaptations, right? So
they have, and the executive producer and showrunner for UNSUB is Lawrence Trilling, who currently produces the show Goliath for Amazon with Billy Bob Thornton. So I know he knows exactly how to put together an awesome writing team and actors and produce a really strong legal crime story series. And I'm thrilled about it and excited to see where it goes.
Yeah. So, moving on from that, let's get started with the discussion. And everyone, if you have a question for Meg, whether it's about writing thrillers or about latest books, type them out in the chat box to the right of the screen. You'll have to log into YouTube to do that. But do that, and Xiaoqin will convey them to me to read out to Meg to answer. But let's get started. Okay, so your three major series are each spearheaded by tough, resourceful, and resilient female protagonists who work in different areas of crime solving and law enforcement. So Caitlin Hendricks is an FBI agent, Joe Beckett is a forensic psychiatrist, and Evan Delaney is a lawyer. So who or what are your inspirations for your female characters?
I wanted to write about women who live full lives, who are resourceful, who are willing to rise to the challenge, who believe that there is such a thing as justice and that sometimes we can find it, and are willing to step up and step out and try to help bring that about. And I wanted to write about. I mean, I'm a woman. I found it easy to write about characters from the inside out who are women, and I really enjoy putting myself in the place of characters who don't mirror my own life directly, but can figure out if they are younger and tougher, and they can run faster and jump higher, and are braver and very resourceful, and know how to come up with exactly the right response with a quip when they need it, not like the rest of us normal people who think of it 20 minutes later after it's too late.
Yeah. So, speaking about female characters, so in the mystery and crime and thriller genres, because they're all, in my mind anyway, they all overlap in some way. The genre has its share of female stereotypes and tropes. So how do you challenge stereotypes and subvert tropes to create female characters with complexity and agency when they are dealing with the world around them, including situations that involve sexism, misogyny, and violence against women and girls? And because they work in male-dominated fields, so they would get more, I tend to think of them as immersed in fields where there might be more sexism and misogyny anyway.
Well, there can be, certainly in law enforcement. Caitlin Hendricks, who is the heroine of the UNSUB novels, knows that she is going to work in a field where she will be in the minority. I created her as a character who comes from a family that has a history of working in law enforcement. Her father was a homicide detective. So she grew up actually probably thinking of not so much of being a woman and how that would single her out. She has to learn to deal with that. But she grew up seeing the job as in all its good and terrible segments. So she knows what it took for her father to devote himself to working homicide cases, to trying to capture the worst of the worst. And she sees the job more than herself as a calling. She knows how rewarding and how taxing it can be to do this work, but she feels a sense of almost duty to take it on herself. And partly that is her upbringing. Her father, his life fell apart because the cases he was working were so difficult and so draining, and their family fell apart because of it. And Caitlin sort of sees herself as redeeming the family name by taking on this work. And she sees herself as she sees her role as being a protector. And whether that comes out of being a woman, especially in a different way than it might for a man who's doing the job, I'm not sure. But she feels like she needs to put this on her own shoulders, that there are people out in the world who do terrible things, and some of them are not going to stop on their own. And that means that other people have to make an effort to stop them. And Caitlin's that person. She's willing to do that. When I researched creating the character, I talked to a lot of police officers, male and female, and FBI agents, male and female. I talked to, did a lot of reading and chatting with women who'd had careers in the Bureau, and what I got was that yes, they were especially women who came in the 80s or even the 90s, that they knew that they were the rare bird, but they were so excited by the work and felt a sense of mission that inevitably what mattered to them was not, and to their colleagues, if they were fortunate, was not that they were a woman, but they were part of the team, and that they were doing the work. And so I placed Caitlin in the modern Bureau, as someone who is comfortable with her femininity, does not regard that as any kind of as a negative in any way. That empathy, compassion, the ability to de-escalate a situation are vital skills, every bit as much as knowing how to walk a crime scene and be able to qualify with a pistol on the range. So Caitlin is comfortable in her own skin, I think, as a woman in law enforcement. She's very aware, though, that cops tend to intimidate people who have no background dealing with them, and so that some men might be, in her personal life, some people might be put off by talking to her or asking her out to dinner.
Yeah. So based on what you said, now let's move on to talking about relationships between women in your books. Your books depict them as complex, and they include female friendships and workplace relationships, such as Caitlin's teamwork with Rainey. And it's the camaraderie and the complexity would feel very real to female readers. And they also include references to aspects of life that women have to navigate, including everything from parenting as a working mother to sexism in the workplace, to having to prove, work twice as hard to prove yourself, for example. So why do you think many authors, including crime and mystery authors and thriller authors, still have trouble writing stories that pass even the Bechdel test, despite the fact that there's so many more things that we women talk about other than men? We have other things to do about.
That's interesting. I mean, as I really want to create, I mean, these characters are completely real people to me. They should have real, full lives. I mean, I feel like when I write these books, we're just getting a glimpse into a narrow slice of their entire life, set in a very restricted time period, and focusing on their work, because that's what the thrillers are about, is the cases that they're working. But in a thriller, you can't spend 50 pages having a digression where you're just like at the picnic over the weekend, or just having people floating down a stream in a boat with nothing happening. The whole idea behind a thriller is right there in the name. It's got a thrill. You're supposed to thrill readers and keep it moving. So you can't just wallow around too much. But the Caitlin and all the characters in my books, they're people. They have friends, they have families, they have lovers, they have histories, they have futures. So I want to indicate that this is how their lives unfold. And I do keep the Bechdel test in mind when I'm writing, and you certainly don't want to find out that there's one female character who's only talking about men in the story, even if it's just talking about a killer she's hunting. That should not be just about that. So Caitlin has a close colleague. Brienne Rainey is a senior FBI agent who is not officially her mentor, but clearly a model that who Caitlin follows. She's a more senior agent. She's in her late 30s, early 40s. She's married, has twins. She's African-American. She's been in the military, and she is tough and funny, and puts it all on the line when she needs to, but she's very cool. And Caitlin sees how she's navigating this career and relies on her for sage advice. And there are plenty. I try to just make sure there are an even mix of men and women in the story as well, even if they're not part of the team that Caitlin's on. I mean, it's roughly a 50-50 world we live in, right? So
what struck me is when you had that little moment where Rainey calls her son and to check on him to see about school. And I'm like, that's what working mothers do. But we don't really see that in many crime or thriller novels, where there are women, female characters. So I thought that was a really, really great touch, because it's one of those things where it makes it more real.
Oh, good.
Real that we are reading about people who are, who feel real, because they also have lives outside of the job that they're doing. And women have to balance that. So, I mean, at least to me as a woman, it felt real. It made her feel more real.
I think it really is real. When I mean, if Rainey had been at home, she would have been on the phone with Caitlin while she was, reviewing the math homework and telling her twins to finish their eggs. So because that's what life is like. So in the stories, they're on the road on the scene of this case. So Rainey has to call in, and her husband says yes. Trey struggled a little bit with the word problems, so she gets on the phone with him to help make sure he knows that he's still doing okay.
Yeah. So, what would you suggest for writers who want to write female conversations and relationships realistically, but who are struggling? Because we all know about the men writing women hashtag, which is everywhere.
Hilarious and cringe-inducing, and I really think I hope that any really highly qualified, confident male writer can do better than the descriptions that come up with in this in the hashtag. Which, if you haven't seen it, it's hilarious, but will make you cringe. And if you're a writer, I hope will make you think twice about describing women or the opposite sex. If you're a woman, there was a women writing men hashtag. What it would sound like if you flipped it, and it was so preposterous that I hope it brings to mind that women live their lives not thinking of ourselves as just there to be admired, looked at, peered at by men. That you're writing characters who are focused on the events before them, and are working on doing a job in a thriller. Pretty much the events of the story will kick it off, and it's the heroine. All the women are just as engrossed as all the men in saving the day, rescuing the town, pulling the puppy from the well, whatever it is. They're not sitting around focusing on how their jeans fit or something like that.
Yeah. So your female characters are tough and dogged in their pursuit of justice, and they have to be, given the sort of violent criminals they face, such as the Ted Bundy-esque Kyle Detrick that Caitlin hunts down in Into the Black Nowhere, which we met when you did your reading earlier during this session. So readers may perceive female characters like this as unlikable, quote unquote, instead of lauding them as compelling and gritty characters as they would do if they were male. So when you write your books, do you ever feel pressured by cultural and social expectations to make your female characters relatable and quote unquote likable?
Actually, I don't. I mean, I'm aware of this conversation that plenty of female authors, and it seems to be many more female authors than male authors, are asked or questioned about whether their female characters are likable. I have never ever considered that as a question when I started creating anybody I was writing about. I just tried to create the most vivid, interesting people I could. I will say that I realized as a reader and as a writer that I'm going to be spending a lot of time with these characters. So I want to make sure that they are interesting. I would never create a character who was knowingly dull. I would not want to create a character to lead a story who is a wimp. Who wants to spend 300 pages reading about someone who just moans and sits back and waits for someone else to come and save the day? You don't want to read about wimps. You don't want to write about wimps. So I knew I needed to create characters who were interesting. And that for that, I thought, even in a story that features life and death, adventure, crimes, the characters have to more or less keep their balance. They have to have some kind of firm footing underneath them. And part of that means that, to me, they need to have a sense of humor. They have to have a perspective on life. And I think generally, if characters have a sense of humor, it can be very sharp. It can be very dry, as often is the case in medicine or law enforcement. It can be a very kind of black, sarcastic humor, because that's how doctors or detectives or federal agents can manage to get themselves through some dark situations and maintain their balance without falling completely into the hole.
Yeah, you have to, though. I mean, like, before we went live and we were talking about, what I see at work every day, as an advocate, it's like, if you don't have a sense of humor, you're going to go crazy.
Right. Precisely. Yeah. That's how you stay sane. And I thought I try to make the humor in the characters that there's a rule I try to remember in life and on the page. If you're writing you never punch down. Mm-hmm. You reach down and you punch up at powerful figures and take the air out of pompous people. So I try to remind that the characters are self-deprecating. They can see the humor in life and in the situations. And I think if they express that on the page, then often readers will come along with them, even if sometimes of course, these characters are flawed. They're human beings. I want them to, have their own, their own insecurities, their own flaws that sometimes pop out at the worst time, the most awkward time in the story. So I think if you do that, then readers certainly don't expect characters to be flawless, perfect. Those are really boring, and they seem really superficial, and they end up being what's called a Mary Sue, which seems to be, you know, a hero worshiping version of some idealized idealized self-image of the author, and you don't want that. Readers will just roll their eyes and close the book.
Right. So before we have a question from the audience, and it's the perfect question to roll into our next line of discussion, actually. So I'm just gonna put the question on screen. So Misty306 has a question. She says, how do you write your mysteries and thrillers so they don't lean more into the horror genre?
Well, mysteries tend to be, you know, about a crime has been committed, a murder has been committed, and the whole point of the story is for a detective to investigate and uncover the identity of this unknown killer and have them be apprehended, brought to justice. In thrillers, generally something bad happens. Maybe it's a murder, maybe it's some kind of disaster that opens the story, and the thrust of the story is for the protagonist to realize that they have to take immediate action to stop something even worse from happening. So a thriller is often a race against time to keep some kind of deadly disaster from unfolding, whether it's personal, societal, global, whatever. Horror stories really work to create a deep sense of dread in the audience. Sometimes they can feature supernatural horror or just extremely gory crime scenes. Horror reaches everything from psychological horror to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which the title tells you everything you need to know about that, to the most psychologically chilling stories that Stephen King ever writes, The Shining, something like that. I think if you're writing mystery and thriller, it's really important to decide what kind of violence you show on the page and whether you show it at all. Certain mysteries, there's a convention certainly in amateur and cozy mysteries that the violence is generally kept off the page, that there's very little blood ever shown. You're aware that that someone has been murdered, but it doesn't seem like anyone ever gets hurt. It's all about the investigation and finding out what's really deep down inside all of the people who are suspects. And in thrillers, what I always have made, with every book I've written, I've gone more in one direction, and that's generally to show the minimum amount of violence on the page that I possibly can. That often when you're starting out, you think like, okay, this is going to be a crime. This is going to be about a killer on a rampage, or some kind of deadly plague sweeping down across the country, and you think, well, you're going to have to show everything that in all its gruesome detail. You don't. That the more you show, the less impact it sometimes has. You need to pick only the exact right amount of detail you need to convey the emotion you're trying to create in the reader's mind. And I got this from Jeffrey Deaver, who readers should know him as the author of the Lincoln Rhyme novels, The Bone Collector, which is now a series on NBC TV in the United States. He's a worldwide best-selling author. And he said that the most powerful thing on the page is the theater of the mind. That's way more powerful than setting a bucket of blood out and spilling it across the page. Because when a reader comes to the story, they always bring their own fears to how they're interpreting it. And anything that the reader comes up with in their own mind is going to reflect their own fears, and that's going to be much more terrifying than what an author can come up with. So you don't need to slather it on for a couple of reasons. One, it becomes ineffective. It starts to numb the reader. Oh, here's another gory shootout where guts are all over the floor. That it just becomes boring. And second, it's gratuitous, and that's what I've learned in writing is never put violence on the page to glorify it, to try to excite the reader, to make them think it's cool, or to shock them. Violence hurts, and it's ugly. It's not a balletic action scene. It's painful. It's harmful, and it leaves scars and echoes that sometimes never fade. So use it to reflect reality and to drive a point home and to develop the story, but you don't need to go overboard.
Yeah. So that is that is a nice way to move into what we're going to talk about next, which is genre and writing. So books and stories in the crime, mystery, crime, and thriller genres usually involve some kind of violence, including violence against women. In fact, the hard-boiled noir subgenre gets criticized a lot because you start with a very visual, very in your face female victim there, which motivates the lone wolf male detective to go off and do his thing. But let's talk about whether or not let's talk about the Staunch Prize. So in 2018, the Staunch Prize, which is an award set up to recognize crime and thriller novels without violence against women. It was launched and it faced criticism from major crime novelists like Val McDermott, who believed that as long as there is violence against women in the world, it should be reflected in fiction. So what is your take on that idea that mystery, crime, and thriller books can work without some form of violence against women? Do you think it's feasible, given some of the long-standing genre conventions and tropes?
It's certainly possible. And, the Staunch Prize is still going as far as I know, and more power to them. I think there's room for a prize like that. There's certainly room to challenge authors to think about our writing and whether we have ever been lazy or sloppy and used violence against women in any kind of gratuitous way on the page. I think challenging authors to think about how they would write a story that without violence against women is fine. Go for it. I will also say I'm pretty sure that my books are not going to be submitted to that because I write in the same. My ideas are probably much closer to Val McDermott's in that they have a kernel of reality from present day reality at the core of every story, and violence against women remains prevalent across the world, and pretending it doesn't exist would be completely unrealistic. I also feature, I write about human beings, so not everybody who is violent in the story it's not only men who are violent. Sometimes there are women who are violent against both men and women. I think it's really important as authors to avoid tired tropes in which the violence against women is portrayed as somehow titillating, or it's used as a spur to the male characters to get them to get their blood up, to seek revenge. against, to avenge the damsels in distress who were helpless and did nothing but die. There's I don't know if you've heard the term fridging.
Oh yeah, fridging.
Yeah, in some stories that the hero's quest begins when he finds a young woman that he loves and who's typically very beautiful and innocent, and he finds her brutally murdered, often stuffed into a fridge, and that's all we know about her, is she's the girl in the fridge. But it spurs him to take on this quest to get the bad guys, and we need to stop using women only as devices to kickstart the men's stories. I also want to make sure that if a woman suffers violence in any of my stories, I clearly want to make sure she's not portrayed just as a body on the floor, just as another victim, victim number 6 or whatever, that she doesn't just roll over and end up dead. And people who suffer violence in the stories, both men and women, I've tried to show how it affects their lives and how they respond to it if they suffer violence. And actually, in the first series I wrote, the Evan Delaney series, it's actually a male character who was a victim of criminal violence that leaves him disabled. He's the main male character in the story, and I really wanted that in the story to show that people don't just jump up automatically after they're run down by a luxury vehicle and just dust themselves off and with a quip and a jaunty little remark, that violence lingers, and sometimes the effects can't be reversed, and you have to figure out a new way to live that incorporates what's happened to you, to rise up in new ways and go forward and bring that into your life, knowing that it's still there and it's happened, but you are still able to be a whole person and live your life from there on out. So it's something I've thought about, and I hope that I write about with respect and never to use just as something to make people lick their lips or say, whoa, that was really gross, and make them feel like these are real people who are dealing with this.
Yeah, because you mentioned having to write about violence against women in your stories, because that's a kernel of reality there, and it is. I mean, it's violence against women has spiked during this pandemic because women are locked in with their abusers, or they are trapped with their families. So everything from domestic violence to female genital mutilation is on the rise, or child marriage. Mm-hmm. And it's what you said is absolutely true. A lot of people don't want to think about the consequences of violence. So if you write fiction that is violent but doesn't show the consequences of violence, it kind of falls flat in some ways. Mm-hmm. Because it doesn't reflect reality if you're writing about violence. So let's go into stories and social change. So stories can be one of the most powerful ways of bringing about social change, because they can help change cultural narratives and perspectives about social issues and traditions. And in fact, a lot of old traditions are passed down orally. They are told in the form of stories. So that's our power still remains. So in your opinion, how can authors strike a balance between their storytelling, between raising awareness about human rights issues such as violence against women, while telling an engaging story without being pedantic or preachy?
Well, you just said it there. I think you answered your own question. The story has to be about compelling characters, and the story has to have a strong hook, something that really drives people to rise above themselves, break into new worlds, come back enlightened in some way, without being preachy. I can tell you that sometimes new writers who come to a story thinking, I need to tell this story because this issue is so important, that the importance of the cause overwhelms their ability to engage readers in the story. And that doesn't work at all. If people turn away because it's just about research or about characters who become so cardboard, black and white, that no matter how important the issue is, it's people are going to feel like they're being force-fed talking points, and they're just going to close the book. So crime and mystery fiction can actually be an extremely effective platform for bringing readers to understand issues they may not have thought about, because mysteries have been around now for long enough, since Edgar Allan Poe and Sherlock Holmes, 150 years, 170 years, that readers are very comfortable knowing how the stories often develop and resolve. And they love to sink into them, knowing how they hope that there's going to be a challenge. There may be death. There will be an investigation, and often some rough form of justice is achieved, even if broken and partial at the end. So they know that they can get to the end and hope that they will find an ending that satisfies them and gives them hope that in real life we can sometimes triumph. So because of that, there are a lot of stories you can tell within that crucible that readers are comfortable exploring, because they feel safe and know where they're going as a reader, with a favorite character, with a favorite author. So you can explore issues like trafficking or racial issues in policing, which people really need to explore a lot more, but that's a whole other topic for another entire discussion. I think of books that bring American readers to foreign countries, that often, if it was just couched as a literary novel, a lot of people wouldn't feel comfortable picking it up. But if it's a thriller, if it's a mystery, if it's a rom-com, people will say, okay, I know what this is going to give me. And you can explode people's worlds, expand their understanding within the form. So it can be very valuable. But if you ever feel like the most important thing is that you have a vital issue, and that's why you need to be published, is because you need to get this issue before the world, I think you're setting yourself up to crash and burn, because often if it's only about the issue and the characters become stick figures being maneuvered around to places where they can give speeches about it, readers are just going to turn off.
Yeah, and I think you made a really, really good point about readers' comfort level. So, and that's very, like you say, genre it's a useful vehicle, because they know what they're getting, and you can explore all those issues in there, but they won't be turned off. And this is how we do it actually with the Pixel Project. We, use music and books and stories and all sorts of different ways to reach out to people in their comfort zone, because if they're not comfortable, they're not going to be listening to you if you're not. If you're talking about something as uncomfortable as violence against women, because like you said, it's worldwide. It's 1 in 3 women facing one form of gender-based violence or another. So before we go to the wrap-up questions, we have one more question from the audience.
Okay.
from a fan of yours. So, will you be bringing Evan back? Brett Battles asks.
Well, hello, Brett. Brett Battles is another thriller author. He's a fantastic writer. Please look up his works, his Quinn novels, his science fiction standalones. He's one of my favorite authors, and I'm lucky to call him a friend. And when will I be bringing Evan Delaney back? If I can give a brief backstory, Evan Delaney, the heroine of my first novels, grew up in a military family, and her hometown is China Lake, California, which is out in the middle of the Mojave Desert, a big nowhere place where the Navy flies its jets and tests its air-to-air missiles and does all its secret research. And in real life, that is where Brett Battles grew up. So he's wondering when I'm going to bring Evan back and send her out to Ridgecrest, California, aka China Lake. I do have the next Evan Delaney novel outlined and ready to go. It's just when I get a chance to set aside a couple of current projects and can bring it back. Evan's story is not over, let's put it that way. So she is still out there drumming her fingers on the table, wondering when she's going to be back on the page. There's an Evan Delaney short story prequel that is out now. It was published in the Mystery Writers of America anthology, Deadly Anniversaries, which came out in April. So you can get a taster of her there. But Evan and Jesse and the CIA operatives who invaded her life and her terrible cousin Tater are all on deck waiting to come back.
All right. So Brett says, fair enough. Happy to hear that. And thanks, Meg. And Missy says, thank you for answering my question. So we're in the final leg of this discussion. So let's talk about parenting, because you have kids. So parents are usually the most influential role models in a person's life, because they're there when we're born, at least for most people. And as a mom, what do you think parents can do to help prevent violence against women and girls in future generations, and to get boys involved in helping to do so?
Well, I have a daughter and two sons. They are all now tall and out of the house. They're not small anymore. My husband and I deliberately modeled respect and affection, honoring each other, honoring boundaries, but especially for the children to respect each other, to respect their friends, to respect when they got old enough to want to start dating, to be sure that they respect the people that they were going out with, and that those people respect them. Absolutely. That violence is never, ever, ever tolerated, period. We never used violence in discipline in our home. Really, the kids, I think, have learned to model that in their own lives. I'm very proud of them, that when I see them interacting with their friends and their partners, that they now show respect, that is, and want to take that out into the world at large as well. So that's my story.
Yeah, and it is role modeling is so important, though. I mean, that's how kids learn, right? I mean, when you're 2 and they see you stick something in your mouth, they're going to take it and stick it in their mouth. So the principle
Pour up their nose.
And so the principle continues right up to, teenage years.
Mm-hmm.
And we try to, I was telling you about how YA authors that we work with, they're kids who come sit, listen to their sessions and ask questions and things. They're learning, still learning. And, we try to get to the kids before they get to college. Because
Right.
once they exit their teens, they're pretty much grown and they have their own minds. But when they're little, they're still going to listen. Even if you think they're not listening, I guess. Even if you think they're not listening or they're not observing, they're listening.
They're fish swimming in the ocean of whatever the world is you're creating in your home.
And who was it who said little pitches have little jugs have, is it little pitches have big ears?
Yes.
Is that thing? So even if they're sitting there and you think they're not paying attention to you, they are. So yeah, got to start young. That's why we asked the parenting question.
Okay.
So here's the final couple of questions, and they're going to be Captain Obvious questions, but obviously we're going to have to ask. You have been so very incredibly supportive of our Read for Pixels campaign and our anti-violence against women work as a whole. So why do you support the cause to end violence against women?
Everyone deserves to live in peace and dignity. Using force for whatever reason is just, it's appalling. It's no matter what your faith, your belief, your creed, your sense of humanity is, it's anti-human. We need to give dignity and agency to every single person who's born on the planet. Women are still, because of our societal expectations, wealth or lack of economic equality and freedom, women are still too often abused and taken advantage of one-on-one or in broad terms in entire societies. So reducing violence will allow everyone's human dignity that we absolutely deserve to flourish and to live in peace, free from fear, to reach our potential. That's what we all need.
Yeah. And finally, what do you think authors can do to help with the cultural change needed to eradicate violence against women and girls?
Speak the truth. Write about, create characters who are realistic. Don't wallow in tired paradigms. Think about new ways of being and reflect that on the page, and show ways that we can break out of the ugliness that still exists, and try to move into a better future.
Yeah. So I'm gonna stick myself back on screen now. Yay! If you joined us, halfway through, this is what I look like, the disembodied voice off screen, asking Meg questions. So we're gonna wrap up soon. So Meg has, for anyone who's joined us late, we'll do a little recap of the goodies that Meg has up on offer as treats for donors on our fundraising page. So she has one UNSUB books and pins bundle. So UNSUB is the name of the series that we were talking about with Caitlin Hendricks and her team member Rainey. So Meg is offering a terrifyingly good goodie bundle for fans of kick-ass female protagonists in the US only. And there's one paperback edition of UNSUB, which is the first book, one paperback edition of Into the Black Nowhere, which Meg read the beginning of right at the start of the session, and one first edition hardcover of The Dark Corners of the Night, all 3 books are going to be signed and personalized to you. So one thing that I'm going to mention here is that sometimes donors also can ask if the lovely bundles like this get sent to their friends who are having birthdays. So Meg is happy to personalize it to your friend too, and just send it to your friend. As long as your friend is in the US. Where Meg is going to be sending the bundle. And there'll be a set of 2 exclusive UNSUB pins, which reflect the theme. One is the cover, is the miniature of the cover of the Dark Corners of the Night, and the other is the weeping eye motif that the villain paints on the walls of his crime scenes, which is that looks a bit Egyptian, actually, that eye.
Well, that's a question. Where does the villain get the model for this eye? What does it mean?
Oh, right. Where did you get the model? Or is that those spoilers if we ask you where you get the model for the eye?
No, that sounded just, I wanted to be a little creepy for the readers. I want to give people a little chill up their spines. And, if you come into a house and it's covered with painted eyes, you're going to think that that's a little strange.
That is creepy, actually. And that's almost like horror. It's almost a horror because of the creepiness of it all. So anyway, so Meg also, if you liked today's discussion and you want to talk to Meg more about what we were discussing about writing thrillers and crime novels, she also has a 30-minute one-to-one video call available to donors worldwide. So if you're writing crime or mystery, crime or thrillers or mystery, and you're not in the US and you're in the UK or you're in Asia or wherever, you can donate to get this session, and Meg will be happy to chat about the art and craft of writing and the business of publishing with you. And we can help with coordinating the time zones for you if you live outside the US. And all donations go towards our work to end violence against women. So they're all up on the fundraising page now. So I'm going to share a little slide that will tell you where to go. Can you see it, Meg?
There it is.
Okay. Here you go. So you can donate to get the goodies via our Rally Up fundraising page at http://bit.ly/R4P Rally Up 2020. Now this is case sensitive, so make sure to take it down accurately or you'll get sent to this page does not exist and get frustrated. So take it down accurately. And you can find out more about the Pixel Project's Read for Pixels programs via bit.ly/Read for Pixels, also case sensitive. If you go to our YouTube page, you'll see over 140 chat discussions with authors archived there, courtesy of the Read for Pixels program. So go check it out. Meg's session will be archived there as well if you missed the beginning of this. So I'm going to stop sharing this. And there are plenty more author goodies available from authors including Kat Cho, Alvin Hamilton, Callie Garrett, who was on yesterday, RJ Barker, Sarah Kuhn, Kandar Blake, Tamara Pierce, and more. And your funds will go towards programs like this, like Read for Pixels, towards our daily Twitter helpline sessions, which tweet out helplines from over 30 countries from 8 p.m. Eastern Time to midnight, and also from 10 a.m. Eastern Time to 11 a.m. Eastern Time for North America. And if you want to find out more about violence against women and what you can do about it, you can visit our website at www.thepixelproject.net. And we have a whole series of pages that are basically, violence against women 101. What's domestic violence? What's rape and sexual assault? What's female genital mutilation? If you want to learn more, just go to our website. And Meg, do you have any other announcements you want to make besides the TV optioning?
That was the big one. That I hope that before too long, people will see the UNSUB series on Amazon TV. And I just want to thank you for having me and encourage everybody to learn more about the Pixel Project and donate generously and help Regina and everybody who runs the project make progress in the fight to reduce violence against women.
Yeah. So thank you, Meg. And thanks everybody for spending Sunday evening with us, and have a good day if you're in Asia Pacific, or good night if you're in North America, and where, everywhere in between, wherever you are in the world.
Thanks.